I was glad when they said to me, "Let us go to the house of the Lord."
I was glad when they said to me, "Let us go to the house of the Lord."
I was glad when they said to me, "Let us go to the house of the Lord."
Standing on holy ground,
Bound firmly together,
We give thanks to the name of the Lord.
and
and
together
together
we will pray for peace.
peace within these walls.
Peace within our family and friends.
Peace within ourselves.
This is the day the Lord has made.
Let us rejoice and be glad in it.
For God's steadfast love endures forever.
Hello, Rainbow. This is Keith Stoltzfus. Ruth had asked for people's reflections as we experience the COVID pandemic, and I feel inclined to share one from the front lines. A warning for you at home: if you're feeling especially uneasy about what we're facing, please don't listen further. I won't be offended if you skip this. But if not, and you feel ready to hear more of the experience, here's what I've been facing over the past week. For those who don't know, I work as a palliative care physician at a local hospital. I primarily work on the inpatient service, caring for seriously ill and terminally ill patients. These are my reflections. The hospital is eerily empty these days. Not completely empty. We still have plenty of patients with the usual ailments, but overall the numbers are low, and this is by intention. All elective procedures and surgeries have been canceled. Some patients are probably staying away for fear of what they might catch in the hospital, and rightfully so. The hospital leadership has done their best to clear things out in anticipation of the coming surge. In addition, there are no visitors allowed except under special circumstances, so the hallways and the waiting rooms are devoid of their normal frenzy. When I consider the word surge, I immediately think of a storm. I've never lived through a hurricane, well, at least not on a coast. I did live far inland in the Philippines when a typhoon struck, but I only experienced gallons of rain dropped over a few days, not gale force winds. However, I imagine that standing in the eye of a hurricane is a bit like what we're experiencing now. There's some degree of calm in the hospital, but we're all waiting for the storm to come. There's a great deal of anxiety as well. We don't have enough personal protective equipment to keep ourselves and patients safe if the numbers do become overwhelming. We're using masks for an entire day, which we would have never considered doing just a month ago. We're not going into patients' rooms unless absolutely necessary, so we save the protective gear for when we really need it. We're having discussions and presentations about ethics during a pandemic and principles that will guide how we offer or withhold care for critically ill patients with COVID-19. I was talking with my sister Claire just a few days ago. She's an ICU nurse at another hospital here in town. We were reflecting on the stress of going to work these days. We want to take care of people. That's why we went into this line of work. We both knew there would be long and stressful days in medicine. That's the nature of it. We come from a medical family. and have eyes wide open about the commitment that it requires and the toll that it can take. But I'm not sure that either of us ever mentally prepared for this. I never quite expected to have the feeling of being a soldier leaving for war as I go to my work as a doctor each day. Specifically, the worry and uncertainty of what each day will bring. If we get to the point of having overwhelming numbers of patients in the hospital, not having enough personal protective equipment to stay safe, continued uncertainty about who has the virus and who doesn't because we don't have enough COVID tests, then it's going to feel ugly. I sure hope we don't get to that point. I hope the social distancing takes effect, but it may not. It may take a few weeks yet. The virus has been moving silently through the community for a while, and we're only beginning to see the effects now. I want to return to this point about ethics in a pandemic. I'm not prepared for it psychologically. What I mean is that we're beginning to discuss rationing of care. Who will get life support and who won't? And it feels very real given the situation in New York and in Italy. Both are places where they're facing such decisions. I face death on a daily basis as a palliative care physician. It's a familiar topic, and I've been with many patients and families through the dying process. In fact, I've had the privilege of caring for members of Rainbow and their family members at the end of life. But I don't feel prepared to face a situation where patients die haphazardly, or where my hospital creates a hierarchy of who is most likely to survive and give life-sustaining treatment on that basis alone. My job as a palliative care physician is to talk with patients about what their goals of care are and to try to match medical treatments and the plans therein with those goals. It's going to be morally scarring if we have to choose who lives or dies. Again, I pray that we don't get to this point, but I worry that we may. A few nights ago, I brought up with my wife Tanya some of my worries for my own well-being. She's a good listener, and we shared together some of those catastrophic concerns that go through our minds at times. I reminded her of what my own advanced directives are, which she's heard before, but we were both a bit tearful because it feels more real now. I don't think either of us will become deathly ill even if we get the virus, but it's not something we can ignore either. Again, being a palliative care doc brings out that we need to talk about the important stuff before a critical moment in me. I sit with my patients and their families as they face emotional and physical pain quite a lot. I'm not sure how they get through it sometimes. I've met so many brave souls and loving souls. A big reason I do this job is because I find it meaningful to help people through this very difficult time of their life, both patients and their families. It's really hard to do this work lately when families are banned from the hospital because we want to keep virus transmission down. My heart aches for those families who can only see their beloved through a video monitor. I've sat with tears in my eyes as a sister says goodbye to her brother for the last time through a cell phone. She wanted to be by his side, but it wasn't possible because of the restrictions in place. It's just not right. Most people need their people at the end of life. I'm not a Buddhist, obviously, nor a Buddhist scholar, but I often think of those teachings. They're translated in different ways, but this is the one that resonates with me. The Four Noble Truths of the Buddha, the truth of suffering, the truth of the cause of suffering, the truth of the end of suffering, the truth of the path that leads to the end of suffering. Even pandemics are part of life, horrible as they are. There are factors both in our control and out of our control that lead to how bad it is. It will end eventually. I pray that compassion, kindness, and the best of our humanity will come through. In closing, I'd like to share from Eugene Peterson's translation of the Bible, which is titled The Message. These are the Beatitudes from Matthew, and I'm going to pick and choose a few as I go through here. You're blessed when you feel at the end of your rope. With less of you, there is more of God and God's rule. You're blessed when you feel you've lost what is most dear to you. Only then can you be embraced by the one most dear to you. You're blessed when you're content with just who you are, no more, no less. That's the moment you find yourselves proud owners of everything that can't be bought. You're blessed when you care. At the moment of being full of care, you find yourselves cared for.